If you've seen the news coverage of those 6 juveniles on an apparent crime spree, robbing people, a restaurant, stealing a car, you have a sense of the violence they perpetrated, the fear they generated. Surveillance video of their shotgun-wielding stick-up of a terrified couple should leave no doubt this was a serious crime. The victims in that video say Dallas District Attorney Faith Johnson wants to try the teen suspects as adults. In Texas, a judge ultimately makes that decision, but at least one Dallas police detective told the victims in his 4 years at Dallas Police, the juvenile DA has not tried one of his juvenile cases. In fact, many officers have complained about a too lenient juvenile system in Dallas County, in which violent cases don't go to trial and the suspects end up on probation. Each of us realize young people can make a mistake, engage in regrettable behavior, but take one more look at that robbery video. This is not a minor mistake or regrettable behavior. This is plain and simple street terror. They put a gun in the face of that couple, committed a serious adult crime, and clearly knew it was wrong because, well, they took off after they did it. So slap on the wrist? No. Even some of the best teenagers occasionally have a minor misstep, but young people must learn and learn clearly and convincingly. Serious crimes like this one will yield serious consequences. You can comment on Facebook. Look for WFAA.